there's no completion.
Hello and welcome to the Two Consoles Too Late podcast. I'm the host, Jackson Keebler, and I am Two Consoles Too Late. What does that mean? Here at this podcast, we look at the classics and the not-so-classics of retro gaming, often for the very first time, but with no built-in nostalgia. And in today's episode, we are looking at Final Fantasy Adventure, also known as Seiken Densetsu in Japan, released for the Nintendo Game Boy in 1991. And although it carries the Final Fantasy name, this name is significant for a different reason. It is the first entry into what would later become the Mana series. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Ubisoft, a little announcement they just made. And a well-known Nintendo leaker has leaked a project called Bernard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And over on Auction Alert, we're going to see what's out there for all the retro gaming goodness, especially the Nintendo 3DS. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go! An article came across my feed that Ubisoft was doing a restructuring and they're doing some massive layoffs and consolidating all their creative projects down to like 5 different houses. I didn't know that things were that bad at Ubisoft, that it had come this far. But I think the big news from the story that I saw, the story that I saw came from Variety.com, is that the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake has been canceled. And if you go back to episode 134 of the Two Consoles Too Late podcast, I talked about the game Prince of Persia. And I think I gave some lip service to this remake, that it was something that was going to happen, but now it is not. And I'm not sure how many people were actually looking forward to that game. Personally, I really didn't care one way or the other. But that's a big game just to drop. And I'm not sure how far that game made it into development. I'd be curious to see what was made so far. But Ubisoft has said, no more. That's not happened. You can just go ahead and
Stick it!
All right, this is another article that came across my feed. This is coming from comicbook.com. It's written by Brandon Zachary, that a notable leaker has hinted at what the next Zelda game could be. Now, there's all this speculation about what the next Zelda game is going to be. I think that's something that's always going to be happening because it's such a huge franchise and it has such a huge fan base. I can consider myself part of that speculation, wondering, okay, what are they going to do next? So this notable leaker, Nash Weedle, has noted that developer Grezzo has used similar sounding code names for other projects. Okay, so right now Grezzo has a project called Bernard, or if you're in the UK, Bernard. So Link's Awakening, the codename for that project was Richard, and the codename for Echoes of Wisdom was Edward. So given that history, they now have a project called Bernard. I'm going to say Bernard. I think it sounds more appropriate. Bernard. Anyway, Project Bernard is a project at Grezzo, and now there's all this speculation that, of course, it's going to be an upcoming Zelda game. But the speculation is, will it be Ocarina of Time? Is it Wind Waker? Is it Twilight Princess? You know, I mean, every possible guess is being thrown out there. But my guess here at Two Consoles, since this is the 40th anniversary of the Zelda franchise, I think they're going to go back to the original Legend of Zelda, the very first one, and re-release it with those updated graphics that we all know and love from Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom. I think that would be a wonderful way to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Zelda. Bring it to a newer generation, the lovable classic. And I think it's going to sell like hotcakes, and I think it's going to be out, my guess is July. And when it does come out in July, I would be there to buy it day one, I can safely say. But that's my speculation. What's your speculation? Drop me a comment on the interwebs and tell me what you think the next Zelda game's going to be. Like I say at the beginning of the podcast, here at Two Consoles, Too Late, we look at the retro games often for the very first time and with no nostalgia. So how did I come to Final Fantasy Adventure? I was thinking about this while I was playing that I don't remember the exact moment where I thought, oh, I have to play this. I'm guessing, because my memory is a little fuzzy and I have to apologize. I bumped my head a lot. Let's just say that. Anyway, I think this game came across my mind when I was working at Goodwill. I think we have either gotten a loose copy or a complete in box copy. Whichever copy was donated to us, we sold, and it went for a pretty penny. A phrase I like to use here at Two Consoles. And it's just the game was kind of like on my radar. Like, what is this and why is it getting this price? So I think I looked it up on the YouTubes and the interwebs, and it looked a lot like Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, which is the game I love. And I absolutely love the remake, remaster, redo, re-release, whatever re-thing they did to Link's Awakening. I like that one too. Anyway, so Final Fantasy Adventure looked a lot like Link's Awakening. And I was just of the mind that, okay, you know, they copied Link's Awakening, which is not the case. Final Fantasy Adventure came out before Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. Final Fantasy Adventure came out in 1991, whereas Link's Awakening came out in 1993. But they did copy that top-down style from the original Zelda. Once again, here we are talking about that and Project Bernard. Can't stop saying it. Project Bernard. It just has a ring to it. If I had a video game project and I had to give it a code name, I was thinking Doris. But anyway. So, Final Fantasy Adventure looked a lot like Link's Awakening, and I was like, okay, I got to play this game. But it's taking me now up to this point to finally sit down and play the game. So I downloaded a ROM, I emulated it on my Wii, I did not buy a physical copy, and I played it over the course of 2 weeks, and I have to say, it was a wonderful 2 weeks. Every night I would get home from work, and I played in chunks of about 1 hour to 2 hours, which is kind of serendipitous because I think that's about the same amount of battery life that the original Game Boy had. Here's some nostalgia for you. Do you remember like the little power light would start dimming and that spinach green screen would start fading? I remember that quite well. So that usually happened, I would say, about a good 2 hours into some heavy gameplay on the original gray brick known as the Game Boy. Anyway, so I downloaded the ROM and I played it and I finished it and I loved it. And I'm going to talk all about it. But if you want to see my experiences of me playing the game, you can check it out on my YouTubes and on Twitch at Two Consoles Too Late. And while I was playing the game, I took some typewriter game notes of my impressions of the game. And you can see those over on the Patreon at patreon.com/2consoles2late. All right, enough shameless shilling of my content. Let's jump right into this game. So by 1991, Square had already established itself as a major RPG developer through the Final Fantasy series on the NES. At the same time, Nintendo's Game Boy had proven that handheld gaming could support deeper experiences than simple arcade-style titles. Square's goal with Final Fantasy Adventure was to create a role-playing game that could work within the Game Boy's technical limitations while offering real-time combat and exploration. To help the game succeed commercially outside of Japan, Square branded the game under the Final Fantasy name, even though it was not part of that series. Once again, in Japan, this game was released as Seiken Densetsu, which means The Legend of the Sacred Sword. All right, so rule number one of when you start to play a new video game, especially a retro video game, because today's video games don't have fucking manuals. you go ahead and you read the manual before you play anything. Before you even plug it in, before you even hit power on your console, you should read the manual, which is something that I don't often do. I just started playing Lemons 3D as part of the PS1 Longbox live stream, and I did not read the manual. I had no idea what was going on, and I just stopped playing. But that being said, to get the story of the game, we have to go to the manual. First, you should understand the story behind the adventure. Okay? That's not me. That's what they wrote in the manual. All right? I can't make that up. A good knowledge of the story before starting the game will add to your enjoyment. It will be especially important to grasp the relationship between the Tree of Mana and the Mana family, the Geminites, and the Empire Glaive, headed by Dark Lord. All right? I just want to emphasize this. First name Dark, last name Lord. All right? It's not the Dark Lord. I think that's somewhat important to the character. Anyway, high above the cloud towers, Mount Illusia, and the Tree of Mana is enshrined on top of the mountain. From the Mana tree gushes out the waterfall, the source of all life in this world. The Mana tree grows on the energy of the will emitted by all things in the world. The Mana tree flourishes in beauty when the spirits of the people are pure, and the water springing out from its roots purifies the minds of people even more. However, once the Mana tree is contaminated with an evil influence, the water springing from the roots becomes tinged with evil force. The foul water turns the people's minds bad, and their evil energy returns to the Mana tree, changing it into an even more deadly existence. The vicious circle goes on until the world is totally corrupted, ultimately meeting its destruction. The Mana shrine is a sacred place where no man should tread. However, there were people who dared to enter the sacred area. They knew that those who touched the Tree of Mana would receive a great power to last for eternity. And it keeps going. The story goes on for 2 more pages. And the manual of Final Fantasy Adventure is 40 pages, which is quite the tome for any video game, much less a Game Boy game. So, now that we have the story, what is the gameplay structure of Final Fantasy Adventure? Well, let's go back to that good old manual. It's a trusted source of information. The goal of the challenge. The greatest object of the game is to stop first name Dark, last name Lord, and Julius, his evil sorcerer, in their evil intentions, and to restore peace to the world. But in order to do so, you must go through numerous obstacles. The dungeons and fields outside towns and villages are full of hideous monsters with traps in unexpected places. You must conquer these obstacles one by one and carry out your mission step by step. However, enemies are not the only thing you will encounter in this world. You will meet friends who will help you in many ways. Always listen carefully to what the people have to say. All right. It's easier said than done when talking to these townspeople. Yeah, so as you go through the game, in this top-down perspective that we all know and love from Zelda, combat is occurring in real time, and the player explores interconnected overworld areas, towns, and dungeons. And along the way, you run into these townspeople. And this isn't the case where you walk up to someone and you press like the B button and then boom, there's their text box and they say their spiel. In Final Fantasy Adventure, all you have to do is just walk up to them, and once you, I guess, collide, touch, whatever, then the townsperson gives you their information. And that's it. And then you walk away. But unfortunately, what happens is that you'll be trying to get to the inn or go to the fucking shop and get some cure potions, and there'll be a townsperson kind of walking around in aimless circles in front of you, and you can't get by. And if you try to get by and you touch them, they'll say their spiel again, give you information that you already fucking have. So it gets a little annoying with these townspeople. And, you know, once again, check out the YouTubes of my gameplay. And once I get to a town, I'm seriously just trying to avoid these townspeople. I get the information that I need. Some of it is helpful, some of it is not. And then I just try to go about my merry way. All right, the game features a variety of weapons, including swords, spears, axes, and chains, and flails. And each weapon serves both in combat and has environmental purposes. So, for example, the axe can also be used to cut down trees, which unlocks paths within the game. The chains or the flails, whips, basically. The chains allow the player to interact with distant objects, much like the hookshot in Zelda. And other weapons include spears. They don't really do much unless you just want to poke something to death. The sickle, which you get early on in the game, which allows you to cut down foliage and open up paths once again. And of course, swords. And this game being Seiken Densetsu, translated means the legend of the sacred sword. Of course, you're going to have a sword. And the swords don't really, they don't cut down trees or anything. They just kill enemies effectively. But the design encourages players to think beyond combat and to use these tools creatively to progress. And also in the game, we have magic. Can't have an action RPG without magic spells, right? So magic is unlocked gradually and tied to elemental spirits. And while magic plays a secondary role to weapons, it adds strategic depth. The only magic spells that I used in my gameplay was Cure, Heal, Fire, and Ice. That was it for the most part. But you do get other spells, which include Mute, which stops magic attacks, Sleep, but in the game it's spelled S-L-E-P. Once again, this game was like limited to 4 characters in the players' names and on these menus. So the sleep spell was Slep. Basically, all the enemies fall asleep and stop attacking you. And you also had the magic spells of Lightning and Nuke. Lightning was L-I-T, just lit. And the Nuke spell, which you needed to unlock the Dime Tower. The lit and Nuke attacks were their attacks shot in a straight line, whereas the fire spell just targeted the nearest enemy, which I found greatly useful. And the ice spell was controlled by the player, and that was much needed to unlock puzzles in the dungeons. The player is occasionally joined by AI-controlled companions, since there is no turn-based combat in Final Fantasy Adventure. These characters assist in the combat and the story progression, though their behavior is rather limited by the hardware of the Game Boy. So as an example, I'm in Medusa's cave and my companion is Lester, the brother of Amanda. And Lester just keeps shooting arrows at random enemies. And after I turned an enemy into a snowman in order to put him on a switch so I could unlock a door, Lester proceeded to shoot the snowman with one of his arrows and make my snowman go away. So I'd have to go off screen, come back on screen so that the enemies could regen and then try to do the puzzle all over again. So in the submenus, when you ask something of your companions, they could do different things. Some companions could restore your health. Some companions could restore your magic points, and some companions could even change the music being played, which I believe was Lester's task when you asked him something. The chocobo, the flightless bird that is common to the Final Fantasy series, when asked would act as fast travel. And I have to say that the theme for the chocobo, when using the chocobo, was rather good. Here it is. But Final Fantasy Adventure, being developed by Square, of course, has some RPG mechanics. And some of those RPG mechanics include inventory management, something that I've come to know and love so much in video games because I'm so bad at it. You have inventory slots that are used for potions, spells, and items that are needed. Now, items that you need are a lot of keys and a lot of matics. And for those who don't know what a matic is, it's like a giant pickaxe. To the point that if you are in a dungeon and you run out of keys, you will have to backtrack to a shop and get more keys. I had to do this in my own gameplay. It's only once you acquire the Morning Star flail, whip, chain, whatever this thing's called. I think it's more of a mace, but that was me. Once you acquire the Morning Star, that allows you to unlock the secret areas of the dungeon that you did previously unlock with the Matic. And to picture that, it was just like dropping a bomb in the original Zelda when you're in a dungeon. You just drop the bomb in the middle of the wall, walk away, boom, secret passage unlocked. So you're going to need Matics to do that, but then once you have the Morningstar Whip, that took over for that. But you did need a lot of keys, and you could not go into a dungeon without, I would say personally, at least 4 keys. All right, and this being an RPG, again, once from Square, you could level up skills throughout the game, and those 4 different skills that you could power up were Power, Stamina, Will, and Wisdom. Now, what do all those do? Back to the manual. According to page 31 of the tome, that is the Final Fantasy Adventure Manual. All right, the hero's stamina, the higher this rating is, the greater the HP. The hero's power, the higher that rating is, the greater the attack power. The hero's wisdom, the higher this rating, the greater the MP or magic attacks. And the hero's will, the higher that rating is, the faster the attack power gauge would rise. Now in my gameplay, I just sort of alternated between the 4 and just rinsed, lathered, and repeat. And by the end of the game, I think I was something up to like a level 50, which I think was perfectly fine in order to finish the game. But I did do some level grinding early on in the game. And one such place I had to do this was in a dungeon. I was about to face off against Davius, also known as the Mind Flayer. I was way underpowered and I did not have enough cure potions. So I just went in this room and I kept killing these mice. That's what they look like. They look like mice. And I just kept killing them, going off screen, coming on screen, kill the mice. Rinse, lather, repeat until I was pretty leveled up. I had lots of cure potions and all my stats were fully recovered. So it's funny because in my notes, which once again you can check them out on patreon.com, this being an action RPG, I forgot that's something that you could do. I thought I would have to leave the dungeon, go to a shop, get more cure potions, but all I had to do was just sit back and grind and then just wait until I leveled up. So once again, there is a power meter at the bottom of the screen which allows you to do a max attack. And that max attack would vary depending on which enemy or which weapon you were equipped with. So if you're equipped with an axe, your max attack was you threw the axe. If you're equipped with a whip, chain, or flail, it extended further. And if you're equipped with a sword, a max sword attack would act like what I called a dash thrust. In the manual, they call them charges. And those charges would come in handy much later in the Dime Tower and when I faced off against a couple of malevolent dragons. But despite the Game Boy's technical limitations, Final Fantasy Adventure did have some notable technical accomplishments. Amongst them were the large continuous map, though the in-game map remained blank and only showed the locations of the towns. For a better map, I referred to a digital JPEG of the insert that was included with the original game. It's a wonderful map of the world of Glaive, I guess the kingdom of Glaive. And I would say it's one of these maps that I would love to frame, but I would be very reluctant to frame it because being inserted in with the game, it was folded upon itself many times. And I wouldn't be comfortable to frame something that had visible folds like that. So I might pop over onto the Etsy's and see if there's a map, but it's a wonderful little map and it really helped me in my gameplay. But the in-game map is just a grid that just shows the locations of towns, and that is it. And as I was playing, I kind of wish that that map was just a little bit more full. But it does show the location of multiple towns, and those towns are Jad, Ish, Lorem, Topple, and Wendell. It does not show the locations of the dungeons. You had to find them yourself through exploration. The dungeons were usually and typically caves. There are multiple boss encounters in Final Fantasy Adventure. The really wasn't any notable bosses. Once again, in the Dime Tower, the last two bosses are a couple of what I said malevolent dragons. And the boss fights in the game, for the most part, were pretty easy. And once you're level up, I just brute forced them. What that means, it's a glossary word. To brute force the boss, I just went up to him, got in a couple hits, cured up using the cure spell, get some more hits. Once my HP went down, cure up, and just rinse, lather, repeat until the boss was dead. I guess you could call it cheesing it. I don't know. I prefer the term brute force. Both are glossary words, and we'll talk about the video game glossary later. Anyway, and also in the game, there are some narrative cutscenes between the characters that progress the story. So yes, this game is on the Game Boy, and it was rather limited, but I think it took the limitations to the max with Final Fantasy Adventure. And lastly, the music and the graphics of Final Fantasy Adventure are, once again, given the limitations of the Game Boy, I thought they were rather wonderful. The soundtrack was written by Kenji Ito, and we've already heard a couple tracks. The soundtrack was minimal, but it was effective, and it used rather simple melodies to establish atmosphere and emotional weight. The music really supported the exploration and reinforced the game's rather serious tone. But visually and graphically, the sprite work is clean and readable, and made good use of the Game Boy's monochrome spinach display that we all know and love. Once again, I was emulating this, but I still had that monochrome graphics. Environmental variety such as snow areas, desert areas, and forest areas were all easily distinguished despite the limited graphic fidelity of the Game Boy. So if you want a physical copy of Final Fantasy Adventure for your Game Boy or Game Boy Player, for your GameCube or your Game Boy Advance, if you want a physical copy, a loose copy of Final Fantasy Adventure is going to be $41, and a complete in-box copy is going to be $110. And we're going to see if we can find that and more over on Auction Alert.
Auction alert.
So currently, when I did a search for Final Fantasy Adventure, of course, I did not get a single listing for the game, but I did find a sold listing for Final Fantasy Adventure that sold on December 15th. Yes, it sold on my birthday. Somebody was just giving me a birthday present, and they forgot to send it. Ugh. Anyway, they bought my birthday present from the Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. There was 7 bids on this auction, and it went for $66. So whoever bought that, I'm still waiting for my birthday present, okay? Thank you. But all joking aside, this went well above price charting at $66. But the cartridge looked really clean, and I don't think that it was a fake, because I'm pretty sure somewhere out there are fakes of Final Fantasy Adventure. So currently on the shop Goodwills, there are no listings for Final Fantasy Adventure, but they do pop up every once in a while. But since Final Fantasy Adventure is the first game in the Mana series, once again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mana. It's not just mana, but I think both are equally acceptable. Anyway, so since Final Fantasy Adventure is the first game in the Mana series, I found a copy of The Secret of Mana, the sequel to Final Fantasy Adventure, for the SNES. A copy at the time of my research for the podcast, it was a current listing, but it has since sold. Secret of Mana sold loose cartridge with a dust cover for the SNES with 15 bids, sold for $60 from the Goodwill of Greater Washington, D.C., which is right down the street on 95 for me. And I think it's funny that this game went for less than a copy of Final Fantasy Adventure. So I think that's somewhat telling of the collectability of Final Fantasy Adventure. But The Secret of Mana, being the sequel, is now on my radar, and I don't need a physical copy of that because it's on my SNES Mini. So if I'm... Hopefully, I would say in the next 6 months, I can sit down with the Secret of Mana, but there's more to talk about here on Auction Alert. All right, there's lots of retro gaming goodies to be talked about here on the Shop Goodwills. So I just go over to gaming system and games, which is a category in the Shop Goodwills, and then I organize them price highest first. And the top priced item on the Shop Goodwills in gaming systems and games right now, Pokemon Red version 1998 sealed, $5,001 with 51 bids, and there's 7 hours left on the auction. So at the time of this podcast, there's not much time left to pick up a sealed copy of Pokemon Red. But there's also a copy of Pokemon Blue, also sealed. That's got 36 bids and it's up to $2,104. And both of these sealed Pokemon are coming from the Goodwill Industries of the Greater Cleveland and Central Ohio. So if you're looking to get some sealed Pokemon games, they can be had. Now, this listing, the Capcom Resident Evil 4 Chainsaw Controller for PlayStation 2 sealed. This is now the third or fourth time that this thing has been listed. When I was at the Shop Goodwills here in Baltimore, it was kind of one of our Holy Grail donations would have been this controller. But this is now like the fourth time this has been listed, which means the previous 3 times, someone didn't fucking pay for it. All right? Don't bid on this shit if you're not able to pay for it. All right? It doesn't magically become yours because you win the auction. You actually have to fucking pay for it. But anyway, that all being said, last but not least, my Holy Grail console, another one has come up. Yes. The Sega Genesis CDX home console with 2 controllers and cords, tested for power right now at $426 with 3 days and 7 hours left on this auction. And that is coming from the Goodwill of the Southern Rivers. I think that's Georgia, but don't quote me. So there's lots of retro game goodness to be had on the Shop Goodwills, but we got to talk about what the hell is going on with the Nintendo 3DS. Now, I've always known that the Nintendo 3DS has commanded a high price, but I always thought that price, I'm using air quotes here in studio, was around $300. But that's just simply not the case anymore. And I got curious as to why there are so many 3DSs going off on the Shop Goodwills and why they are commanding such a high price in 2026. Prices that rival and sometimes even exceed the price of a Nintendo Switch or even a Switch 2. And also, I have to wonder, who the hell is donating these consoles? Because somewhere out there, there's someone who's getting all nostalgic for Pokemon X or whatever game they want to play on the handheld. And they go over to their mom's house and like, hey, Mom, have you seen my 3DS? And Mom says, oh, no, honey, I just gave that to Goodwill. You what? Yeah, because there's so many of these 3DSs here on the Shop Goodwills, I have to wonder. So I'm just going to go down the list of all these 3DSs real quick and just kind of, what it is and what the price is, because it has me scratching my head is a term I like to use here at the podcast. All right, so first off was a new Nintendo 3DS XL, the SNES edition. It has been tested and reset, came with a charger with 4 days, 6 hours left on this auction and 12 bids, $402. Okay. And then it just keeps going. The Nintendo 2DS XL Pokeball Edition with stylus, $322.89 with 8 bids and 6 hours left on that auction. Nintendo Red New 3DS XL tested with stylus, $251. Nintendo. Now here we have just a Nintendo 2DS. That's the one that I have. That's the one that I think you should get. That's only going for $74. Moving on. Here we go. Nintendo 3DS XL Legend of Zelda Hyrule Gold Edition, $388. All right, and there is 7 hours left on that auction with 18 bids. Another Pokeball edition, a Galaxy edition at $282.89. And the listings just keep going on and on and on and on. So I went to the YouTubes and I had to look up, why is the 3DS so expensive right now? And I was thinking, was it because of Street Pass? Is that a thing? And I think that has something to do with it. But apparently, a lot of people are buying 3DSs and modding them. And once you mod a 3DS, you can play all sorts of games on them. And so I think that's why the 3DS is commanding such a high price right now. It's not simply Street Pass. It's not because these things are limited editions. It's because they are modded, and that's allowing people to tap into their nostalgia even more. Once again, here at the podcast, I did not want a 3DS. I wanted a 2DS because I just thought that 3D feature was kind of a gimmick, and it didn't really do anything for the games. But, that's me. But $300 plus, at that point, you're looking at a Switch. And I guess a lot of these games for the 3DS, I guess you can't get them on the Switch. So maybe that's why. I don't know. Do you have a 3DS? All right. If so, drop me a comment. Tell me why you like it. Tell me why you would want a 3DS. Would you mod your 3DS? I don't know. Once again, if I had some absolute fuck you money here at the podcast, sure, I'd go ahead and pick up a 3DS, but it's something that's definitely not on the radar, and not for $400, because if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to get me some PS1 long box games. All right, so that all being said, let's dive back into Final Fantasy Adventure. What is the legacy and the influence of this game? Well, Final Fantasy Adventure laid the groundwork for the Mana series and directly influenced later titles such as The Secret of Mana and The Trials of Mana. Many systems introduced here, the real-time combat, the weapons-based progression, and environmental interaction would all be refined in later entries in the series. Final Fantasy Adventure was later remade. It was remade as The Sword of Mana for the Game Boy Advance, and it was part of the Collections of Mana. It was called The Adventures of Mana, and that is on modern platforms such as Switch. The reason I'm talking about that is because when I came to play Final Fantasy Adventure, immediately one of my thoughts was, is there a newer version of this game that I could play? And there was. It's part of the Collections of Mana on the Switch. I looked at it. It was like $40, and I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go with the original version. And I'm glad I stuck to my guns. I don't think a remastered, reissued, redone version would have made the game any better, because it was just as good on using those simple Game Boy graphics and the simple chip tunes that were made possible by Kenji Ito. But this is something I keep finding myself with games. Right now I'm playing Shadow of the Colossus, and I'm playing it on PS4, but that was a PS2 game. And, I went on the interwebs and I asked, which version should I play? Should I play the original or should I play the remaster? And for the most part, everyone said, you know what? If you play the remaster, you're not really losing anything from the original. But personally, in my head, I have to admit, I have to wonder if I'm losing some sort of like retro credibility by playing a remastered game. And I'm about to start Assassin's Creed 2 here at Two Consoles Too Late headquarters. And that is part of the Ezio collection, which is Assassin's Creed 2, 3, and some other game I don't know. Anyway, so I'm about to start playing Assassin's Creed 2, which I have for the PS3. But now I'm like kind of, rubbing my chin, wondering, well, should I get it for the PS4? Is it going to make the game that much better that it has updated graphics? Probably not. That's usually been my experience. When you make a good game, you know you have a good game despite the graphics. So anyway, getting back to Final Fantasy Adventure, yes, it has been re-released, remastered, re-whatevered. And those games are The Sword of Mana and The Adventures of Mana. But in conclusion, here at Two Consoles Too Late, what did we think of Final Fantasy Adventure? I thought it was wonderful. I thought the music was wonderful. I thought the gameplay was wonderful. The story, oh my God, it's surprisingly emotional storyline. There's so many moments in this game, too many to talk about. I think the one that really stood out for me is once you reach the top of the Dime Tower after defeating the boss, your robot companion throws you to safety and sacrifices himself so that you can bring down Dark Lord. And the interaction between the hero and the robot, I didn't cry, but I felt it. There was a bit of a gut punch there. And Final Fantasy Adventure was filled with those little moments that I really enjoyed that I didn't really think was possible on a Game Boy game. So, thumbs up here at the podcast. It's not a sequel, but now I definitely have to say that since this is the year of the sequel, Secret of Mana is on the radar, and I would expect to hear a podcast about that pretty soon. All right. So here in Baltimore, we're having a rare snowstorm. We are buried under what looks to be about 6 inches of snow, sleet, and ice. So I'm off work today. So it's been nice to have a much needed day off and just do nothing. I'm going to get out of here and go play some Assassin's Creed 2, a game I've been kind of looking forward to. And this is the year of the sequel, so I'm trying to play video game sequels and see if they surpass the original entries in their series. But thank you for listening to the podcast. I've been the host, Jackson Keebler. You can check me out on the interwebs. Just go to Google and type in 2 Consoles Too Late, and there I will be. You'll find amongst my Facebook, Instagrams, I'm all there. Also be sure to check out the Patreon. Once again, I just did a bonus podcast going long, talking about my ongoing PS1 Longbox collection. And I've also got some video game notes there that you can check out. All right, I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm out of here. But as always, have a good one. I love you, and goodbye. So if you're listening to the podcast and you made it this far all the way to the blooper and you thought that this podcast sounded different, it's probably because it did, because I did something to my computer. I have no idea what I did, and I had to change a whole bunch of settings, and it's still not right, and it's really pissing me off. And I thought that getting a new Mac would somehow improve everything, but it's just made everything worse. And now I really regretted my decision, although I found out recently that my old iMac died. The screen went to absolute shit after I gave it away, which makes me feel kind of bad. But so it would have come time to get a new computer anyway. I just think that maybe I should have just, financed a new iMac. That would never have worked because my credit score is absolute shit. And I have no patrons. And it would take a lot of patrons to buy a new iMac. So I'm rambling, but I gotta figure out what's wrong with this stupid fucking computer because it's just pissing me off. Anyway, thank you for listening. Goodbye.